so great to do a meditation with other people and join that consciousness together to lift our consciousness so that we can actually send out healing. So tonight, I know when Jack was in New York, he heard people chanting at the bottom of his apartment complex. It was actually probably one of the oldest apartment areas in New York. And he heard them doing Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And they invited him to come and join the group. And he had incredible things happen to him after he did that chant. And my son Del, he really got into doing this chant, and he got on his path after he did this for quite a while. And I'm going to explain what it is. It helps soothe our troubled mind. Anything that quiets the mind, that just, you get into this chant and you just let yourself turn over to it, and you get out of your mind of having to do something. You remove the veneer of suffering, grief, hardship, and pain, replacing it with peace. It helps people to stop suffering and start living. So I thought tonight we would do Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and I'll be doing over and over again, so you'll eventually get it. If you've never ever seen it in print, you will eventually get the sounds and just do it. And just know that after you're finished, you've been lifted, you're with clear thought, and a lot of people have prosperity doing this chant. They want to change things on a job or have a better employment, and miracles happen with that. So it has been known to bring prosperity also. So, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, 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 Nam-myoho Renge Kyo.
for a long time in our lives while we're growing up, we naturally think that the difficulties and problems we face need to be taken care of outside of ourselves. And so that's what it seems to us, especially in the Western culture, that our lives are about, solving problems. And we're always trying to do better, solve problems in such a way as to make life easier for ourselves and in some cases for other people. And then we get to a place where we question the religious ideas that we hear about, because we wonder if they really work. And it leads us to somewhat of a disillusionment. But that disillusionment will lead us to a truer way of operating in relationship to problems in life and life in general. So disillusionments are going to happen in our journey through life. But basically they are stepping stones to a more meaningful and effective way to be alive. So you have heard me say that there is useless, unnecessary suffering. There is real suffering, but there is also useless, unnecessary suffering. When I talk about real suffering, it's your home has been repossessed or something like that, or you lose a job you really needed. Your wonderful, loving dog has passed on, or a member of the family. So there's real suffering. But most of the suffering in our Western culture is useless, unnecessary suffering. It is conflict and consternation and resentment and anger at all the conditions and circumstances we would rather have going another way. So when we find the opportunities, we should look within ourselves, because that's where the true spiritual transformative religion actually takes place. It doesn't take place in somehow getting a movement going and changing conditions and circumstances out there. That may be necessary in some situations, but for the most part, the spiritual journey is really involved in taking to task our own awareness and releasing useless, unnecessary suffering. So if we were to look within and see if we can discover when we are in resistance to that which we happen to be doing, when we are mentally in resistance to that which is taking place in our lives. It may be we're on some job, or we may be with certain people, or it may be something that's required of us, the income tax, the cleaning of the garage, something like that. And what we have is, inside, we're resisting it. It's there, and yet inside we are mentally resisting it. And that's creating a conflict and an anxiety and an anger. And for some people, it's a very high-powered anxiety and anger or depression. Because the voice then of the ego is saying, why do I have to be doing this? Somebody else should be doing this. Why did it turn out this way? What am I doing with these people? On and on and on. And so that resistance is unhappiness. It's a lack of peace of mind. And it connotes most of the unhappiness that is taking place in people's lives in our Western culture. They are in resistance to what is. They are resisting it within themselves, and they're supposing in some way or other that's helpful. It's not. What it is, it's actually destroying any peace of mind that one might have. So you have the entire works of Eckhart Tolle, who is trying to get us to recognize that the only real moment in life is this present now moment. And unless we can navigate that in a harmonious way, a harmonious fashion, we're not going to be clearing the way for a feeling of peace and happiness and joy in the future. Not only that, when you know that peace and happiness, joy and love are attractive, they're not just attractive in a sense of getting a partner, they're attractive in a sense of bringing into your experience things that really corroborate your peace and that bring forth your reasons for love. See, we keep thinking you're trying to find a reason out there, a partner out there, something to take place that's going on out there. If I can get that, then I will have love, I will have peace. There's the mix-up. The problem is, if you can actually sustain peace and harmony and consideration and love, things will start to happen that will corroborate your feelings of peace and happiness and love. Now, stop right now and just ask yourself, how much of what I just said do you believe? Because it's a question between staying in the unity teachings of truth or returning to the Methodist Church. So you can go on all day having your Sunday church, etc., and you can keep thinking that you're going to be saved from some other points of view, and keep thinking that heaven is someplace else, and that you'll get there on some distant day because you're not all that bad. But you're not there today. So today you have within yourself these grievances. And the only one that can bring you into the consciousness of God is yourself. You see, there is the divine influence. There is this refined intelligence at the core of our being that if allowed to come forth, if in our spiritual practice we allow it to come forth, it will literally bring about all manner of harmony, healing, and peace. But we have to recognize that it has to do mostly with the way we think about what's going on in our experience. So if your thoughts are not in alignment with what you're doing, then you are in a state of conflict. And it is that state of conflict that creates the unhappiness, the anxiety, the depression, the anger. So, isn't it a fairly simple thing to recognize? There's people that meditate and do a lot of meditation, but still aren't aware of the fact you have to carry the inference, you have to carry that subtle feeling of meditation into your life because you are karma yogis. You're staying in the world, but you can't remain of the world. If you don't get anything else, get the next few words that I'm going to be saying about the world. In the world, a person only has peace when his or her desires, opinions, demands are being met, when things are going according to what you want, you will have peace in the world. It's a fleeting peace because that doesn't last very long at all. And as long as you're counting on that, what you'll be trying to do is you're going to be trying to make more money so that you can control more of those circumstances so they'll fit your desires. Let me tell you, enlightenment lies in what I'm saying to you right now. You can't have enlightenment. You can't have healing unless you become willing to take to task your own awareness and recognize when you are in resistance to the conditions and circumstances in which you find yourself. What if you actually knew that all the conditions and circumstances that you find yourself in are there by divine appointment? God says, put this person with those characters over there. What? Yeah, it's a party. Put that person in there. They're nothing like her. It doesn't matter. I want her in there. I want him in there. To learn enlightened awareness so that you can be present with whatever is taking place without internal resistance to it. Recognizing that we don't have the kind of control we think we want. The illusion is getting control, getting a lot more money, getting that popularity so that you can manipulate those partners and those people and have people think well of you and think, adulate you and envy you. That's the world that Jesus said you must overcome that. You may, when you're very young and you have been fortunately blessed with good health, good looks, maybe even some money, a trust fund, and you can do the scene. You can flip your hair and wear your clothes and get people to look at you, and in some way maybe some people will envy you. It's going to play out. It's going to go south. The will of life is that you are either going to come into soul consciousness, you're either going to come into your divinity, and whatever age you do that, it'll be a matter of your choices, or you will not. And then you may go on to another life in which all of those things that you had in this life, which only worked against you being awake enough, listen to it, awake enough to be considerate of everybody else. Because you weren't awake enough to be considerate of everybody else, you didn't know what it means to be God conscious. So now in this life where you had all those wonderful things on the physical level, they're going to be gone in your next life. So that's okay. These are your teachers. The next life, you won't have all of that. And maybe you'll be one of those persons you kind of looked down on or ridiculed or belittled or thought less of. So there is real suffering. That does take place. And we go through periods where we have to be able to deal with that. It's painful. We grieve. That's natural. When we learn to see that other people going through real suffering, we might be able to be of some help. We might be able to give them something that will be of some help. But you see, the biggest problems we have are internal. We haven't yet opened up to the reality that we are all one. There is one thing going on here, and it is life. And life has been given the opportunity to recognize itself in the process of living. If you're not awake in the process of living, you're not going to get it. That useless, unnecessary suffering is something that we will ultimately have to alleviate within ourselves. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a really, it's not the best example to give because it involved drinking wine. I used to work as a waiter in the worst place in the world to be a waiter in New York City. I worked in a couple of places in New York City, but this one place was really a problem. And it was easy to be in a state of resistance all the time, hating the job. It's the kind of job that this particular restaurant was right across the street from the big Lincoln Center where they have all the ballets, and then the Opera House was on the other side of that, and then there was a big theater thing. And people would get out for a 20-minute break and come cramming into this restaurant, and they'd all want drinks. And then they get like a 20-minute intermission or something to get drinks and get back. Well, of course, it's because most people in the city living like that are, they're certifiably insane. And then you have to wait on these people. So you are rushing to get their stuff out because you're hoping to get some tips and have a life for yourself. But it was so bad, the crunch was so bad doing these breaks, and sometimes you had 2 or 3 intermissions, that waiters would take your orders off the window. Like, because you could get hamburger, you could get steak tartare, you could get, all kinds of different things along the fast food line. And then they wanted drinks or beer or whatever. But waiters, in a hurry, if they'd grab your hamburgers or grab whatever food is, if they had an order for that, and it would go off the window, then you'd have to wait extra. And then you had resentment and anger, and you wanted to get on. And so it was a horror plot. The entire place was a place where God sends people he wants to ultimately become ministers. Because you very quickly get that life isn't a bowl of cherries. So this is, working there. But I'll tell you how it was resolved. It was resolved when we began to recognize that these people rush in and rush out so quickly. They have to get out of there to get back for the second act or the third thing. And they a lot of the times leave a half a glass of wine on the table. And there's a lot of tables. So between that point there and the next break, you can get pretty stoned. When you're collecting the dishes and everything, you get whacked by drinking the leftover wine and drinks, even mixed drinks. So, and it didn't matter. You were just trying to get through the night as best you could. So you just swallow anything you could find on the table that was left over. But it took away from the anxiety and the angst, because by the next break, you really didn't care whether you made any tips or not. And the waiters were all looped. When they finally got into this, the waiters were okay with each other. They didn't care. Okay, take it. You want the hamburger? Take it. Take it out of the window. I don't need it. It's all right. Fine. Let those people wait over there. So we resolved it by being okay with the way it was going to be. In other words, another crowd of people are going to come in. They're all going to want their food right away. They want their drinks right away. They want to back it up. It's going to be exactly the same way, except this time you don't care if it is. Because the idea of making tips and having done a good service and getting good tips from these people has left you. You're not striving for anything. You're simply doing whatever you can possibly do without anxiety. And the anxiety, of course, and I don't like to give this to you because a lot of you will leave here now and think that the answer to your problems is alcoholism. I've come a long way since then. I could do that job today without the wine. But it's not having resistance to what you're doing. So we got to the place where we had no resistance to all of the stupid, crazy stuff that took place there. We just did it. Because I'm doing it. And how it works out, whether I make the tips or not, doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it because I can't do anything else. They're still going to steal my orders off the window. There's still going to be problems with the tables and the people angry. And if you don't know this, by the way, you can take this with you. You're not going to get a spiritual message tonight. Take this with you. When you're in a restaurant and you're ordering, and maybe you have your family with you, and you see that the place is slammed, that's an expression waiters use. I'm slammed. The place is slammed. It means that there's people everywhere, and they're wanting and needing something. You see, that's the time to not ask the waiter these really unimportant, silly questions. Like if you go into a restaurant with a bunch of people and you see it slammed and you sit there and it comes over to your table to ask for your order and you say, what is the fish like? What is the fish like? You're asking, first of all, the waiter probably never ate any of the fish in the restaurant. He's probably not, affluent enough to eat fish there. And if he eats any fish, it'll be leftover fish that you left behind. So, but when you ask, how's the fish, he doesn't know. For him, there's a frozen fish in the refrigerator. The cook is going to cook it. He's going to put it on a plate. He's going to bring it to your table. But he doesn't know how that fish is. He doesn't have any idea how it is. But he has to say something to you. And then you say things to him, you question him. But he's slammed. He's going to say anything to you to make you feel okay. And you'll say, oh, can I get this in a certain way? Or do I have to get the baked potato with this? Or can I just get like French fries? Or can I get, and you go on and on about it. But the best thing to do when you see that the place is slammed and your waiter's really, really busy, don't try to fix the order a certain way, this way and that way. Just order what's on the menu and take it the way it is. If you can't eat the baked potato, stick it in your purse. Because that's spiritual. That's kindness. That's consideration. It's proving the fact that you're on a spiritual journey. So listen to I'm not the only one trying to share this stuff with you. I'm going to share this with you from Eckhart Tolle. Okay, where are you? This is from Eckhart Tolle's book, Stillness Speaks. Whenever you are able, have a look inside yourself to see whether you are unconsciously creating conflict between the inner and the outer, between your external circumstances at that moment, where you are, who you are with, or what you are doing, and your thoughts and feelings. Can you feel how painful it is to internally stand in opposition to what is? When you recognize this, you also realize that you are now free to give up the futile conflict, this inner state of war. So you can take this with you. I'll just listen to this again. Whenever you are able, have a look inside yourself to see whether you are unconsciously creating conflict between the inner and the outer, between your external circumstances at that moment, where you are, who you are with, or what you are doing, and your thoughts and feelings. Can you feel how painful it is to internally stand in opposition to what is? When you recognize this, you also realize that you are now free to give it up. Give up this futile conflict, this inner state of war. Okay, so we're going to meditate again. And the best part of all of this that we're involved in is that no matter how far away from the flame of consciousness you may be, you're given permission to be there and to be waking up because you're there. The universe has given us all permission to live and be awake in our living and make the changes from within ourselves that will bring us into the divinity that we were born to express. That's what's going on all the time. Now you can ignore it, avoid it, miscue, that's fine. There's no judgment. The only judgment is that your life isn't going to be as harmonious. There's not going to be as much peace. There's not going to be as many things happening in your favor because you're in opposition to the will of life. But there's no judgment. There's only life and the opportunity to move with it, bless it, be considerate of it. If you don't have a particular meditation technique tonight, if you, when we get to that period of silence, about 10 minutes of silence, you may want to just use this idea in whatever way seems appropriate to use it. Everything I look upon, everything I see, is only God looking back at me. Everything I look upon, everything I see, is only God looking back at me. we will take a few moments to pray for those who have been submitted to our prayer list. In this process, we recognize the connection we have on this more refined level, the divine level of awareness, so that we seek to bring forth that joy of being that we have in our experience in meditation. Because that is the healing joy, that is the healing love. So as a name is called, if you know the person whose name is called, see them just completely filled with this divine consciousness, feeling the joy and love of being one with God. If you don't know the person whose name is being called, just see the name in the divine light of God.
Mick Rivers, Yvonne Iden, Charlie Bolta, Paul Dugan, Marjorie McCurtain, Dan James, Annie and Ivan, Sharon Lippy, John and Roxy Stovall, Janelle Nicobo, Dave and Helen Webb, Jack Martell, Kayla Rose, Kelly and Irina Rustello, Wendy and Jay Littlepage, Wayne Bartolet, Dawn Lee and husband Don, Janet Gonzalez, Don Dunnigan, Kate Beltrami, Raquel Marina, Bonnie McDonald, Serenity Ribera, Jill Factor, Sally Park, Gail Wagner, Steve Taylor, Lori, Sandy, Dennis Drake, Vilma, Nola Iden, John DeVos, Dell and family, the Nestor family, Tim, Ann Courtney, Elizabeth Dixon, Dolores Bale, Paula Long, Gabe Vikananthan, the earth, the air, and the water, all the people and children at the borders, truth and integrity, the United States government. You can call out a name if you would like to at this time.
D. Matthew, S. Casey, S. Daniel, Nola, Frank P., Carl,
You see this healing light surrounding the prayer box, and all the peoples whose name have been submitted throughout the month. We see them healed physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Let us take a moment to realize this divine presence coming forth into the consciousness of everyone sharing this Boulder community with us. The awakening to the reality of the divine opening the consciousness of everyone in the state of Colorado. And this awakening being spoken about and shared and thought about by more and more people as it spreads to the consciousness of everyone sharing these United States with us. And it moving out, taking in everyone on the North American continent. And everyone, all the denizens of all the continents of the world, coming into this recognition of the divine within themselves and finding it in everyone else. And this translating into healing, harmony, and love for all of the creatures that we share this planet with. All of the marine life and all of the birds and all of the trees and fields, all of the bushes and all of the vegetation, all the waterways, the rivers and lakes and ponds and oceans, the earth returning to its pristine majesty, and mankind awake in the reality of his, her divinity. As we pray, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. And God is love. To this we say, Amen. We will take an offering for unity now. As we take our offerings in our hands, let's recognize the universal law in which we exist and have our being that prevails in the ideal of giving, knowing that in giving we receive. We bless this offering with these thoughts. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I give and all that I receive because I give. Together, please. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I give and all that I receive because I give.
The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. You can sing with me. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you. I want to love you more. I want to love you more. The greatest thing in all my life is loving you.
Join me now, please. We dedicate this tithe to the will and the work of the Spirit of truth. The Spirit available to each of us, the Spirit that joins all of us. We dedicate this tithe to the victory of the Spirit of truth. Amen.